A young man took his mother's bracelet to a job interview, but when the boss looked at his wrist, he was paralyzed, speechless upon recognizing the bracelet. Alex, raised by his grandmother, is about to discover a truth that will change his life. Grandma Laura hands him an old bracelet, saying, "Take this with you. It might bring you luck." At the job interview, Mr. Smith notices the bracelet and, visibly shaken, asks, "Where did you get that bracelet?" This encounter leads Alex and Mr. Smith to a joint investigation, uncovering family secrets and unexpected connections. Alex, perplexed, confronts his grandmother. "I need to know the truth, Grandma." Alex grew up in a small apartment with his grandmother, Grandma Laura. Since he was little, he heard stories about his biological mother, who supposedly abandoned him. Grandma Laura was all he knew as family, a strong and determined woman who worked hard to give him a decent life. She was always busy, either taking care of household chores or working 2 jobs to ensure Alex had everything he needed. Alex, in turn, helped as much as he could, showing an early maturity and deep admiration for his grandmother. Now 20 years old, Alex was preparing for a job interview at a large tech company. He was nervous but confident. Grandma Laura, as always, was by his side, giving him strength and advice. At that moment, he remembered a rainy morning years ago when he was about to give up on an important school project. Grandma Laura, with her wisdom and patience, encouraged him to keep going, telling him that effort was always worth it. This shaped his character and determination. "Remember, Alex, be yourself and show your worth," Grandma Laura said as she adjusted his tie. She had a calm smile on her face, but her eyes betrayed a slight worry. "Thanks, Grandma. I'll do my best," Alex replied, smiling nervously. He knew the interview was important not only for his future but also to repay all the sacrifices his grandmother had made for him. Before he left, Grandma Laura handed him an old bracelet that belonged to Alex's mother. It was a simple, worn leather bracelet, but it held immeasurable value for her. "Take this with you. It might bring you luck," she said with a distant look. Alex felt the weight of the history and emotions that little object carried. Alex looked at the bracelet, a simple object but loaded with history and emotion. He put it on his wrist and left for the interview. On the way, he thought about all the stories his grandmother told about his mother. With each step, he felt a stronger connection to his past, a desire to learn more about his roots. Upon arriving at the company, he was greeted by an assistant who led him to the waiting room. Alex observed the other candidates, all seeming prepared and confident. He began to remember his grandmother's encouraging words and tried to stay calm. He also recalled an old story his grandmother used to tell about a marathon she ran when she was young, where, even exhausted, she managed to finish the race. This always inspired him to never give up, regardless of the circumstances. Finally, he was called for the interview. He entered the room and faced Mr. Smith, the head of the company. He was a serious man with a piercing look that seemed to see beyond appearances. "Good morning, Alex. Please have a seat," Mr. Smith said, pointing to the chair in front of his desk. Alex sat down and began the interview. They discussed his qualifications, experiences, and future expectations. Everything seemed to be going well until Mr. Smith noticed the bracelet on Alex's wrist. He stopped talking, his face paled, and his eyes fixed on the object. "Where did you get that bracelet?" he asked, his voice trembling. Alex was surprised by Mr. Smith's reaction. He didn't expect a simple bracelet to cause such an impact. "It was my mother's. My grandmother gave it to me before I came here," Alex replied, trying to understand the reason for the question. Mr. Smith seemed to be in shock. He got up from his chair and walked over to Alex, looking more closely at the bracelet. His eyes filled with tears. "That bracelet belonged to my missing son," he said, almost whispering. Alex was speechless. How could his mother's bracelet be related to Mr. Smith's missing son? Questions began to flood his mind, but he didn't know how to express them. Mr. Smith composed himself and sat back down. There was a mix of pain and hope in his eyes. "We need to talk more about this, Alex. I think there's a lot we don't know about our families," he said, trying to control his emotions. Alex nodded, still processing everything he had just heard. He felt that this interview would change his life in ways he could never imagine. When he left the room, he looked at the bracelet once more, now with a new meaning, and promised himself he would uncover the truth behind this unexpected connection. Alex left the interview with his head full of questions. Who was his mother really? And how was her bracelet connected to Mr. Smith's missing son? He needed answers, but he knew he would only find them by talking to his grandmother. The way back home seemed longer than ever, each step heavy with uncertainty and anxiety. When he got home, he found Grandma Laura in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The familiar aroma of his favorite dish filled the air, but today it couldn't calm his nerves. "Grandma, I need to talk to you," Alex said, trying to contain his anxiety. He knew this conversation would be difficult, but he could no longer delay it. "Sure, dear. How was the interview?" she asked, smiling. Her smile always gave him comfort, but today it seemed distant. Alex sat down at the table and took a deep breath before starting. It was different. "The head of the company, Mr. Smith, recognized the bracelet you gave me. He said it belonged to his missing son," Alex explained, watching his grandmother's reaction. Grandma Laura's smile disappeared, and a look of concern took over her face. She put the spoon aside and sat in front of Alex, her eyes revealing an untold story. "Alex, there's something you need to know about your mother and your biological father," she began, her voice trembling. "Your mother didn't abandon you. She was a victim of a series of terrible events. And your father, he had problems with the law and mysteriously disappeared." Alex felt a lump forming in his throat. Everything he had always believed seemed to be falling apart. "So why didn't you ever tell me the truth?" he asked, trying to understand. There was a mix of anger and sadness in his voice. "I wanted to protect you, Alex. Your mother suffered a lot, and I thought it would be better for you to grow up without knowing all this pain," Grandma Laura replied, tears in her eyes. The pain in her gaze was evident, and Alex felt some of his anger dissipate. Alex felt a mix of anger and compassion. He loved his grandmother, but he needed to understand the whole truth about his past. "I need to know more, Grandma. Mr. Smith wants to talk to me again. I think he's also looking for answers," Alex said. Grandma Laura sighed deeply before continuing. She seemed to be struggling against painful memories. "All right, Alex, I'll tell you what I know. Your mother, Clara, met your father, Michael, when they were young. They fell in love and soon discovered they were expecting a child. Michael was a good man, but he got involved with the wrong people and ended up having problems with the law. He disappeared shortly after you were born. Your mother was desperate, and I took her in along with you. And the bracelet? How did it end up with me?" Alex asked, still confused. "The bracelet was a gift from Michael to Clara. When she decided she couldn't take care of you alone, she asked me to keep it as a memory of him. I didn't know it belonged to Mr. Smith's son. This changes everything," Grandma Laura explained, thoughtful. Alex felt there was much more to discover. He decided he would meet Mr. Smith again to try to understand better this complex story. He remembered all the nights he wondered about his mother, all the moments he felt incomplete without knowing his origins. Now he had the chance to fill those gaps. The next day, Alex returned to the company. Mr. Smith received him in his office, still visibly shaken but determined to discover the truth. "Alex, I want you to know that my son's disappearance is something that has haunted me for many years. When I saw the bracelet, I felt there was a connection we couldn't ignore," Mr. Smith said, trying to stay calm. "My grandmother told me some things, but there are still many unclear points. We need to piece together this puzzle," Alex replied, determined. Mr. Smith nodded and suggested they start investigating together. The first clue would be to review old family photos and try to find any link between the two stories. They spent hours looking at old photos, each image bringing more questions than answers. In one of the pictures, something caught both their attention. A photo of a family party where Michael, Alex's father, appeared next to Grandma Laura, smiling and relaxed. It was clear that there was more to this story than either of them imagined. The presence of Michael in Mr. Smith's family photos indicated a deeper connection between the two families. This photo, I had no idea my grandmother knew Michael so well, Alex said, studying the image. It seems there are more secrets than we imagined. We need to talk to your grandmother again. Mr. Smith agreed with a determined look. The discovery of the photo left Alex and Mr. Smith even more intrigued. It was clear that Grandma Laura and Michael had a closer relationship than she had revealed. Alex decided he needed to confront his grandmother to get more direct answers. Each step back home was filled with anxiety and anticipation. When he arrived home, he found Grandma Laura sitting in the living room chair, looking at an old photograph of Clara and Michael. Seeing him enter, she raised her eyes, and they reflected a mix of sadness and resignation. "Grandma, I found a photo of you with Michael at a family party. I need to know more about this. Why didn't you ever tell me about the relationship you had with him?" Alex asked, trying to control his frustration. He felt the truth was close but still out of reach. Grandma Laura sighed deeply before starting to speak. She seemed to age before Alex's eyes. "Alex, I was hoping you wouldn't need to know these details, but I guess I can't hide the truth any longer. Michael and I were very close before he got involved with your mother. He was like a son to me, and when Clara came along, I felt I was losing him," she said, tears streaming down her face. Alex felt the weight of his grandmother's words. The story was more complex and painful than he could ever have imagined. "And why did you never tell me this? Why keep this secret for so long?" he asked, his voice choked. "Because I feared you would judge me. I raised you as my grandson, but the truth is that you are Michael's son. When Clara got pregnant, Michael panicked. He loved your mother, but he was in trouble with the law and decided to disappear to protect you," Grandma Laura explained. Alex felt a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, he was relieved to finally know the truth, but on the other, he felt betrayed and confused. "So my mother didn't really abandon me? She knew where I was all along?" he asked, trying to process the information. "No, Alex, your mother never knew the truth. She thought you were safe with me and that it was the best decision at the time. I did what I thought was right to protect you," Grandma Laura said, her voice heavy with emotion. Alex felt a mix of anger and sadness. He needed to get out and think. He grabbed the bracelet and left the house, walking aimlessly through the city's streets. His mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do next. The next morning, Alex met again with Mr. Smith. They decided they needed to find out more about Michael's disappearance and how he was connected to the bracelet. "Alex, I have a friend who is a private detective. Maybe he can help us piece together this puzzle," Mr. Smith suggested. Alex agreed, and together they went to meet Detective John. They explained the whole situation and showed the photo they found. "This is very interesting. I'll start investigating immediately, but I'll need more information about Michael and the last years of his life," John said, noting everything down in a notebook. While John investigated, Alex and Mr. Smith continued to look for clues. They found more photos and documents showing that Michael had ties to dangerous people. This explained why he disappeared to protect his family. With each new discovery, the plot thickened and became more intricate. One night, Alex received a call from John. "Alex, I think I found something. There are records that Michael was last seen in a remote neighborhood known for being a hideout for criminals. I'll need you to come here to see this for yourself," the detective said. Alex and Mr. Smith went to the location John indicated. The neighborhood was grim and seemed forgotten by time. When they arrived, John showed them an abandoned house where Michael was last seen. "We need to go inside and see if we can find any clues," John said, opening the rusty door. As they entered the house, they found a room full of old documents and photos. In one of the photos, they saw Michael with a man Alex didn't recognize. But Mr. Smith went pale upon seeing him. "That's John, my old business partner. He disappeared around the same time as my son," Mr. Smith said, his voice trembling. Alex realized that the story was about to take an even darker and more complex turn. They knew that finding John could be the key to unraveling the mystery and bringing the truth to light. The revelation that Mr. Smith's former partner, John, was involved with Michael added a new dimension to the investigation. Alex, Mr. Smith, and Detective John knew they were closing in on something big. John's presence in the photo suggested he could be the key to understanding Michael's disappearance. "We need to find John," John said, determined. "He can tell us what really happened to Michael." The search for John was intense. John used all his contacts and resources to track down the whereabouts of Mr. Smith's former partner. Finally, they got a lead. John was living in a nearby city, leading a discreet life away from prying eyes. Alex and Mr. Smith decided to confront him personally. When they arrived at the address, they found a modest house. John opened the door, visibly surprised to see the unexpected visitors. "Smith, what are you doing here?" John asked, trying to hide his unease. "We need to talk, John. It's about Michael," Mr. Smith said, straight to the point. John turned pale but invited them in. They sat in the small living room, and the tension was palpable. "John, we know you were involved with Michael before he disappeared. We need to know the truth," Alex said, trying to stay calm. John sighed deeply before starting to speak. "Michael and I got involved in dangerous businesses. He wanted out, but the people we were involved with wouldn't let him go easily. So he planned to disappear. But things didn't go as we expected. He was kidnapped by a rival gang." John confessed, his voice trembling. "And you? What did you do?" Mr. Smith asked with restrained anger. "I tried to help, but I was threatened. I ended up running away to save my own life. Since then, I've lived with this guilt," John said, tears in his eyes. Alex felt a wave of emotions. His father hadn't abandoned his family voluntarily. He was a victim of terrible circumstances. But there were still unanswered questions. "And the bracelet? How did it end up with me?" Alex asked, holding the object. John looked at the bracelet and sighed. That bracelet was a gift from Michael to Clara. He gave it to her as a promise that he would return. When he was kidnapped, the bracelet was taken with him. "I didn't know it was with you until now," John explained. Alex felt they were finally getting to the bottom of the mystery. But there was still one missing piece: Michael's current whereabouts. John revealed that the gang that kidnapped Michael was dismantled a few years ago, and many of its members were arrested. He suggested they visit one of the gang's former members, who was now serving time in a local prison. The next day, Alex, Mr. Smith, and John went to the prison. They met with Paul, one of the gang's leaders, who was now an old, repentant man. "I know why you're here," Paul said upon seeing them. "Michael should never have been involved in this. He was a good man. We tried to use him as a bargaining chip, but things got out of control." "Where is he now?" Alex asked urgently. Paul lowered his head before responding. "Michael managed to escape a few years ago, but he suffered head trauma during the escape. He's wandering the streets in a fragile mental state. No one knows exactly where he is," Paul confessed. Alex felt the weight of the revelation. His father was alive but lost and vulnerable. The mission now was to find him and bring him home. They left the prison with a new purpose, determined to find Michael and help him recover his life. Alex, Mr. Smith, and Detective John began the search for Michael. They knew finding someone living on the streets wouldn't be easy, but they were determined. They split into groups and started visiting shelters, talking to homeless people, and distributing photos of Michael. Each lead brought them closer to the goal but also made them anxious. One afternoon, while walking through an area known for housing many homeless people, Alex found a woman who claimed to have seen a man matching Michael's description. He's always near the train station. He looks lost, sometimes talks to himself. But he's harmless, the woman said with a look of compassion. Alex thanked her for the information and ran to find Mr. Smith and John. They decided to go to the train station immediately. Upon arriving, they began searching every corner, asking people if they had seen someone matching Michael's description. After hours of searching, Alex spotted a man sitting on a bench, looking distant. He felt a chill down his spine, realizing that this could be his father. He approached slowly, trying not to startle him. "Michael!" Alex called, his voice choked. The man raised his eyes, confused. Alex could see the physical and emotional scars that time had left on his father. There was a flicker of recognition in Michael's eyes, but he seemed lost in his own thoughts. "Dad, it's me, Alex. Your son," Alex said, kneeling beside him. Michael looked at Alex with a mix of confusion and pain. Gradually, his memories began to return. "Alex, my son?" he asked, his voice trembling. Alex nodded, tears streaming down his face. Mr. Smith and John approached, watching the scene with emotion. "Yes, Dad, we're here to help you. Let's take you home," Alex said, holding Michael's hand. With the support of Alex and Mr. Smith, Michael stood up, still trembling. They took him to a hospital, where he was examined by doctors and received the necessary care. Michael was physically debilitated, but the hardest part would be dealing with the psychological traumas he suffered over the years. While Michael was under medical care, Alex and Mr. Smith took turns by his side, offering support and affection. During one visit, Michael began to remember the events that led him to the state he was in. "They kept me captive for years. I tried to escape, but the fall, my head, I can't remember everything," Michael said, his voice weak. "Dad, you don't need to worry about that now. The important thing is that you're safe and we're here for you," Alex said, holding his father's hand firmly. As days passed, Michael began to recover slowly. The constant presence of Alex and Mr. Smith was crucial for his recovery. One day, while at the hospital, Michael made a shocking revelation. "Clara, your mother, she knew I was in danger. She tried to help me but was prevented," Michael said, his eyes filled with tears. Alex felt a new wave of emotions. His family's story was even more complicated than he imagined. His mother never abandoned him. She tried to save Michael but was prevented. As Michael continued to recover his memories, Alex and Mr. Smith decided to confront Grandma Laura once again. They needed to understand why she kept so many secrets and what her role in all this was. When they arrived at Grandma Laura's house, they found her sitting in the armchair, looking at an old photo of Michael. "Grandma, we need to talk. Michael is alive and he's starting to remember some things," Mr. Smith said, in a serious tone. Grandma Laura looked at them, visibly shaken. "I know I made many mistakes, but I did what I thought was best at the time. I wanted to protect Alex and ensure he had a better life," she said, with tears in her eyes. "Protect me by hiding the truth? I grew up believing my mother abandoned me, and now I find out she tried to save my father," Alex said, with pain in his voice. "I'm sorry, Alex. I never wanted you to suffer. I just wanted you to have a chance to be happy," Grandma Laura said, crying. Alex felt a mix of anger and compassion. He knew his grandmother had made mistakes, but he also knew she loved him deeply. "We need the truth, Grandma. We need to understand what really happened to move forward," Alex said, holding her hand. Grandma Laura nodded, knowing it was time to reveal everything. She took a deep breath, preparing to tell the whole truth. Grandma Laura took a deep breath and began to tell the whole truth. Alex and Mr. Smith listened intently as the pieces of the puzzle finally came together. "Michael was always like a son to me, even before Clara appeared. When he got involved with dangerous people, I knew it would bring problems. I tried to advise him, but he was in love with Clara and determined to build a life with her. She began, her voice choked with emotion. So, when Clara got pregnant with Alex, Michael panicked. He knew the people he was involved with wouldn't let him go easily. He decided to disappear to protect Clara and Alex. He asked for my help, but I was afraid of what could happen. She continued. I suggested that Clara and Alex stay with me while Michael sorted out his problems. Clara agreed but was prevented from helping Michael when he tried to escape from the gang. She never knew the full truth, and I kept this secret out of fear that the truth would destroy all of us. Grandma Laura confessed, sobbing. Alex felt a lump in his throat as he heard his grandmother's words. He always knew she loved him, but he never imagined the secrets she kept were so deep and painful. Grandma, I know you did what you thought was best, but we need to rebuild our family based on the truth, Alex said, tears in his eyes. Mr. Smith was also visibly moved. He looked at Grandma Laura with a mix of understanding and pain. Thank you for finally telling the truth, Laura. We need to move forward and help Michael recover, he said, his voice firm. In the days that followed, Michael continued to recover in the hospital, surrounded by the love and support of Alex and Mr. Smith. The constant presence of his family was crucial for his improvement. Over time, he began to recover more memories and understand what had happened. During a visit, Michael called Alex and Mr. Smith for an important conversation. I remember more things. The truth is that, during my escape, someone helped me. It was a desperate attempt, but I managed to escape thanks to this person, Michael said, with a determined look. Who was this person, Dad? Alex asked, curious. It was Grandma's accomplice, a man named Robert. He felt remorse for what he had done and decided to help me escape. After the escape, I lost contact with him, but I know he deeply regretted it, Michael explained. Alex and Mr. Smith decided to find Robert to understand better what had happened. After an intense search, they managed to locate him in a small town. Robert was living a simple life, trying to redeem himself from his past mistakes. Robert, we need to talk about Michael. He told us you helped him escape, Alex said upon finding the man. Robert nodded with a sad look. Yes, I helped him. At the time, I was Grandma Laura's accomplice, but I realized how wrong we were. When I saw the opportunity, I helped Michael escape. After that, my conscience tormented me, and I decided to change my life. Robert confessed, his voice filled with regret. Alex felt a mix of anger and gratitude. He knew Robert had done terrible things, but he also knew that he had helped his father at a crucial moment. Thank you for telling us the truth, Robert. We're trying to rebuild our lives and need all the pieces of this puzzle, Alex said sincerely. With all the revelations and confessions, Alex, Michael, and Mr. Smith began to rebuild their lives. Grandma Laura, remorseful for her mistakes, also joined the process of healing and reconciliation. The pain of the secrets finally revealed began to give way to a process of healing. Michael, with the support of his family, started a process of recovery and reconciliation with his past. The physical and emotional scars were deep, but the love and understanding of his family gave him the strength to move forward. Clara, Alex's mother, was also contacted, and the reunion with Michael and Alex was filled with tears and hugs, symbolizing a new beginning for all of them. In the hospital, Michael made one last revelation before being discharged. I tried to run away from Grandma Laura and Robert because I knew Clara and Alex were in danger. But after the escape attempt, I was captured and suffered head trauma that affected my memory. Now, with your help, I'm beginning to remember and heal, he said with a look of gratitude. Finally, Alex, Michael, and Clara began to rebuild their lives, united by love and forgiveness. The journey had been painful and full of obstacles, but the desire to overcome the past and build a future together prevailed. Grandma Laura, now more at peace, watched the family rise again and knew that despite her mistakes, she had contributed to their unity. And so, the story of Alex, Michael and Clara transformed into a narrative of overcoming and love, showing that even in the most difficult circumstances, truth and forgiveness can rebuild lives and create unbreakable bonds.